What if the real reason your restaurant is struggling isn't food, labor, or inflation, but a lack of systems, leadership, and digital strategy? In this episode, Carl Orsbourn breaks down why today's restaurants are more complex than ever and how the operators who win are the ones who master leadership, culture, customer data, and smart technology. From creating unforgettable Instagram worthy guest moments to leveraging AI, Carl reveals how to turn chaos into clarity and build a restaurant that thrives, not just survives. If you want more loyal guests, stronger teams, and a true competitive edge, this conversation is a must listen. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Restaurant Rockstars podcast. Carl, you are a forward thinking industry professional on the cutting edge. I would say you're even far beyond that in the hospitality space. So, welcome to the show today.
Roger, it's a pleasure to connect with you again, sir. It's been a while, but I appreciate you inviting me back.
Well, you were a great guest and it's been long overdue. As you mentioned, it was over 2 years ago. So I'm really glad to have you back because you've got so much to offer this audience. Let's talk about today's restaurants, and they're struggling with so many challenges. And in many cases, it's because of a lack of systems. And I'm a big believer in running a business versus running a restaurant. What advice do you have to our listeners today who might want to transform their approach and get their business to the next level?
Oh, big question to kick us off with there, Roger. Look, the challenges on running a restaurant business today have never been more difficult, I think it's fair to say. And it's not because the process of running a business is different. It's not because the art of hospitality is necessarily majorly different. It's to do with the fact that there are so many different channels attributed to cater for and to keep the standards that you set for your business in line with that, regardless of where your customer is. And I often say to folks, especially when I talk about throttling, for example, it's like, well, if you're going to throttle an online customer, would you ever close the doors of your physical restaurant and stop them from coming in because you're too busy to see them at that moment? No, of course we wouldn't. Get off them a seat at the bar or something like that. And so the challenges today, I think, is managing just the multiple channels that are really growing in size and relevancy, the challenges that come to operate in each of those channels differently. And then, of course, the different systems, the different technologies that are servicing each of those channels as well, and the complexity that is caused when trying to make those various different systems work together.
Excellent. We're going to dive into technology in a moment. We've got a big belief in leadership versus management, and there's a certain approach. So let's talk about leadership because I think it's a key to part of that transformation. So what is your leadership approach? How can operators establish like real accountability with their teams? Because a lot of them struggle with that.
Mhm.
Smithfield Culinary is dedicated to providing restaurants with the right protein for every plate and every day part. They understand that for meat lovers, enjoying a favorite cut is more than a meal, it's a memorable experience. Discover Smithfield's new ready-to-eat select bacon, designed to save chefs time with no mess left behind and no crumbs left on the plate. Or try their new ground chorizo, packed with bold, smoky flavor that brings the heat to any dish. Look to Smithfield for one of the most extensive pork portfolios available, including bacon, ham, sausage, and more, all your favorites. When you partner with Smithfield, you serve the food you love, and your guests will love what you serve. I've tasted Smithfield products at numerous restaurant shows, and they're consistently excellent and always delicious. For orders or additional information, visit smithfieldculinary.com/Smithfield.
Well, ultimately, this is probably more appropriate for the bigger enterprise restaurant groups, but if you don't have a pulse on the kind of ears and eyes of what the operators, the folks that are in the kitchen, the folks that are at the front desk, the folks that are actually helping people understand the new LTOs and hearing from them what is going on, then you don't have a handle on your business. So I think it's probably less about the words that you're saying to your team. It's more about how you're listening to them, how you're showing up, how you're empathizing, and what you're then doing to then give them that feedback about what you're hearing and how it's changing your business for the better.
Yeah, there's so much of that mentality of being the boss and, workers are expendable. And if you're not good at this job, there's someone else behind you. But those days are long gone. And now true leadership is recognizing talent and giving people additional responsibility. But the accountability piece is, I still hear from lots of restaurants that say, why don't people show up on time or why do they call in sick? And some operators feel like they're held hostage by their teams. It's like people, we need them more than the team needs us. And I've definitely seen a lot of that. And there's definitely a different approach and not being the boss, but being a collaborative leader versus just barking orders at people. So I'm sure you've seen a bunch of that too.
I agree. I mean, look, all you need to do is look at data, and the data will show that the restaurants that have the lowest levels of turnover, whether it be at the management level or at the team member level, and those that actually have their restaurant managers spend more time with their team members and more time with their guests relative to time in the office. You take those two data threads and you compare them to the sales of those that perhaps don't have that same level of proportionality, and you'll see the answer right there. So therefore, the starting angle on all of this is, what do we do to be able to help us address turnover, to create the better environments for people to want to carry on working within our environments, and to treat them with the right level of respect so that they feel they're getting a good experience. But then secondly, what are we doing to get the managers out of the office to spend more time with their team, to be able to spend more time with their guests? And the answers to those two questions, I think, are going to help those folks really find the kind of step change in performance.
Thank you very much. I believe that the restaurant itself, the floor, the back of house, front of house is the office. It's not the office office. So I'm glad you shared that. Second part of that, let's talk about the customer experience. And you call it customer centric. Can you kind of explain that, how you achieve being customer centric, and then perhaps what foundation you need to set that approach in a business?
Yeah, well, customer centricity, obviously I approach it slightly from the angle of both of my books, but the piece around this is, think about your favorite restaurant, your favorite restaurant experience. More often than not, you're going to be pointing towards perhaps an independent restaurant, where when you walk in, the person that greets you goes, "Oh, hello, Mr. Osborne," right? And then you're seated perhaps at your favorite table where you sat last time, and maybe the maitre d' comes across and offers you, you want that same bottle of Chardonnay you had last time you were here, and congratulations again on your anniversary that you're celebrating tonight. Those little subtle points to make it feel like you're in your restaurant, not their restaurant. That
Yes.
type of hospitality that I'm talking about when it comes to customer centricity. Now, that type of experience doesn't happen 9 times out of 10. Let's be honest, it doesn't happen. And everyone will read the unreasonable hospitality of this world that talk about creating those types of experience, and they're absolutely fantastic ways in which we should think about it. But the reality is that unless we're capturing that data about where I sat last time, or that I drank that particular bottle of Chardonnay, or that you've referenced my open table reservation saying it's my anniversary tonight, or at least those types of things, if we're not capturing that and then turning that into the service experience, then how should we expect the other 9 out of 10 that are not doing it to really grasp it? Because some of us have been trained by the best. Some of us have been trained to really understand the standards, to know that that's important, regardless of whether it's being captured. They're taking proactive steps to look into the reservation, to look at the last time they perhaps came, and to be able to understand that. And that's those 1 out of 10 folks. But we've got to think about the enabling systems to help the rest of our teams to be able to create that. So you're never, I don't think, going to get a 10 out of 10 type of space unless you go into one of these fine dining spots. But imagine the difference if that out of those 1 out of 10, it's now 3 out of 10. That's going to make a major difference for your restaurant. And it's going to create a social dynamic where people are going to talk about the experience they had at your restaurant relative to others. And that's a competitive difference.
Your online reviews will start to climb as well. I love that. I love that approach. That sounds like a competitive advantage to me when we know that perhaps the guy down the street or the restaurants down the street aren't doing these things. And those are needle movers. Like if you recognize guests as if they are regulars in your place, even if they're first time visitors, I think that goes a long way. If you get to know them by name, training your team to make friends with your guests and introduce yourself and create these relationships, every one of those things I think is pretty exponential to that overall hospitality we're trying to deliver. So thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. So your MO, modus operandi, is really standards, capabilities, and culture. Can you explain what that means?
Embry, Roger, I love the fact you remember that. Yes, I brought this to every operation I've ever kind of led. It's It's really important to me. And I think it can apply not just in the restaurant space, but in any kind of leader's toolbox, if you will. The first thing is, what does good look like? What does the best look like? I mean, I just referenced this 1 out of 10 experience, right? And so you have a clear view as to where does great represent itself. And yes, that could occur in terms of a customer experience, but it could turn up in how do you run a good meeting, right? How do you run a good town hall for your team members? How do you represent the best type of response to a disgruntled customer, right? So whatever it is, having a view as to what great looks like is the standard piece of it. And actually writing it down, maybe giving some examples of how this came to life in recent experiences. When you then take the next step, you then say capabilities. Okay, well, what are the capabilities we need to be able to create great? Sometimes that's about defining the right profile of people, the right type of person that's going to regularly, consistently be able to create that type of greatness. Other times, it's about the tools, the right types of tools that you need to be able to have in place to be able to help enable and augment those people to be able to create those great experiences. And then there's the third piece of this, which is kind of in the gray area, but it's in that word culture. So what are the things that sit outside the kind of black and white people and tools aspects of this? But what are the things that creates the culture to want people to strive for greatness, to be able to give the feedback to the leaders in the business to be able to say, actually, I think we need to get this kind of tool in here to help us really get to greater levels of consistency, and also create the performance culture that allows people to create feedback loops appropriately to help each other, not just in terms of manager and employee, but even between the group, in between the team, to be able to say, what are we going to be able to do to create more of these 1 out of 10 experiences? So where we can really create an environment where we win together. So culture is, they always say culture eats strategy for breakfast, but it's a vital part of that. And that's often different depending on the environment that you're in and the current status of the team, the challenges that you're dealing with. But it's really critical to take it as its own part of that system outside of defining what great looks like and the capabilities piece of it. And of course, culture then supports those first two.
Two sides of that coin. First, we started talking about standard operating procedures or SOPs and writing things down and then following those procedures and how long should a meeting be or what should we really focus in on or even pre-shift exercises that I've always believed are vital. These are all SOPs to a successful restaurant. So that's key. But then now it's overlapping with that culture piece. Let's talk about what culture really means and what's the difference in your mind between culture and a mission statement. Restaurant owners and general managers, listen up. Your biggest challenges are labor and shrinking margins. Both kill your profit. I help restaurants find and fix those leaks. Last year, I uncovered over $300,000 in lost profit in 2 independent restaurants and $885,000 in a 5-location pizza chain. I specialize in controlling costs to maximize profit, training managers to become leaders, training front of house staff to sell, and marketing that drives trackable, new, and repeat business. If you want more profit, less hours, and a dream team staff in your restaurant, book a free 30-minute profit strategy session with me. Email roger@restaurantrockstars.com. That's ROGER @restaurantrockstars.com.
Oh, wow. Mission statements are often set in a vacuum. They come down perhaps from the ivory tower. Whereas culture exists in every single experience from the moment you clock in to the moment you leave. It permeates every aspect of your business, permeates to the little things that perhaps aren't written down, right? The things that are representing themselves and the mindset of your team. So, you might not have an SOP for how often you replace the toilet rolls in the restroom. Okay, maybe you don't. But if someone walks in and notices that within the next couple of guests, the toilet roll is going to be out, then what the culture that you're setting up is for someone to say, no, I almost have this ownership mentality. And so therefore I want to make sure that the toilet rolls are replaced. You take that example, you permeate it across plenty of other examples because you can't write it all down. And if you do, you have a big manual so big, no one's ever going to read it anyway. So for me, it's about the unwritten elements attributed to things that sit outside SOPs.
Love it. We constantly taught and trained people to treat every guest like the most important guest. Every table is your table. And essentially, what that meant is you might have a section over here and you're in the kitchen, but Bob has a section over there, but he notices a problem or a situation at someone else's section. It's like you jump in, you go above and beyond, you take initiative, you recognize that, we had battle stations, we called them, where you policed your own section, but then you walk through the front door with a set of eyes and you noticed and you fixed things that you could within your control that the guests would notice that you didn't want them to see. You wanted to fix things. And that worked really, really well. And that was part of our culture. So I think all these things, whether they're written down or they're just trained and understood and it becomes conditioned behavior, is a really powerful thing in a restaurant. So I'm really glad you shared that. What are today's dining guests really looking for? What are they seeking today? Because there's been such a transformation. Obviously, they want value, and inflation and labor challenges have affected operators' abilities to deliver that value. But what do you see?
Really good question, and it's timely, right? Because the reality is that dining out today is far more costly than what it was a few years ago, and so they are looking for value for money, but they also understand. I think there is an understanding that times are a little bit more difficult, and restaurants have had to adapt prices accordingly. But here's the thing: is that they're probably also saying, "Well, I want to have a great experience tonight." But also they're thinking, do I want to come back a month from now or for the next special occasion? And that really requires then the restaurant team to think about how they're going to create that type of experience that's going to, I often call them Instagrammable moments, right? This idea of how am I going to celebrate the fact that I've had a great experience here and tell my social circle about it in a similar kind of fashion. The the ways in which restaurants are thinking about that actually again requires that kind of entrepreneurial hustle to understand where can I actually not only just give and create a consistently great experience from the food itself or the standard expectations of service, but actually to do something that really picks up on the nuance of the moment. And so that again, I referenced the Unreasonable Hospitality book earlier. That I think talks about many types of examples where those types of things happen. So how do we think about that today in a dine-in setting that allows us to create a great experience that someone's going to go, huh, they treated me differently from the standard routine transaction. And by the way, this doesn't have to be only appropriate to fine dining environments. The other day, for example, I was at a QSR and I saw someone open up one of those little packages of sauce and the sauce erupted in front of the person in front of them, right? What I
No.
also then saw was one of the team members come over and actually address the situation with some napkins and a little bit of water and stuff to help them and just to help them recover from that situation. They weren't involved in it. They didn't do it. There wasn't actually anything wrong with the service of the operation, but they were attentive in the moment to address it. And so it's about trying to create that kind of culture of understanding. How do you create these moments and rescue moments in that particular situation so that they just feel a little bit more special?
I absolutely agree with you. And that is hospitality at its absolute foundational level. When a team member recognizes something that they didn't cause, that they weren't part of, but it somehow negatively affects the guest experience and they jump in to try to make it right. If that culture pervaded every restaurant everywhere and people really went out of their way to, like I said, make friends with a guest and make things right and just give them lots of reasons to want to come back, return, and give you a positive online review. I think that's really solid. Now, unreasonable hospitality, I think knocked my socks off a bit because it's the things that a guest would never expect to happen in a restaurant that I can't believe they just did that for me. They went out and they fed my parking meter so I didn't get a ticket and all kinds of things like that. And obviously many restaurants aren't going to take things to that extreme, but I think the thinking goes such a long way. If you can think about how can I set this restaurant apart from, like I said, the competition and just stand out in terms of that word hospitality. I think that's really a beautiful thing if you can do it. You started this talking about perhaps the technology that captures guest data. It's all about the data. And when you get to know people and what their favorite cocktail is or their favorite bottle of wine and when their anniversaries are, what would you say is necessary because you're so involved in the tech space? What is the necessary technology that you're seeing that every restaurant can benefit from that's fairly easy to onboard, but it pays so many dividends in terms of guest convenience, efficiency, satisfaction, things like that?
Oh, wow. Again, big question, that one. My second book,
Yep.
Delivery Digital Restaurant, The Path to Digital Maturity, talks about that. And the answer to that question really depends on where you are on the path. Because if you are a restaurant that just has not embraced any form of digitization early on, then it's actually about opening up those new channels. Whereas if you're deeper down the path, then actually deploying CRMs and CDP kind of capabilities to not only capture your customer details and record them appropriately, but then also turn them into outbound efforts so that they feel like it's not just an email that's plaguing their inbox, but actually it's recognizing that, oh, you came in last Valentine's, you're going to come back again. We've got this new special. It might be great for you. Right. Or understanding that actually, if I'm a vegetarian, sending me the latest new beef burger on your menu doesn't make sense. Right.
No.
That's where a lot of these new capabilities when it comes to the CRMs and the CDPs are starting to capture that and also turn it into better forms of outbound capabilities. So that there is the answer, quite honestly, Roger, is it depends. But of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't start to talk about the thing that really has like touched all of us over these last kind of year, 18 months, and that is AI. And the journey on AI is one whereby everyone now is selling their technology, program, software, whatever it is, with AI this and AI that. And sadly, most of it is BS. There is a lot of stuff out there where people are just using it because of the tagline attributed to AI, because it gets people's attention. A lot of investors, a lot of boards are putting pressure on the executives to be able to, we've got to do something with AI, and they put it in. And the reality is these point solutions are not doing the business. When you look at Gartner or MIT reports, and this is not just restaurants, this is across all enterprise, somewhere between 95 and 90% of AI pilots that were launched in the last kind of year have failed to scale. So we're back here again, unfortunately. When I last spoke to you, it was talking about the trust in technology, and we're still there. How do you actually trust what capabilities can do this thing? And this is where I think the proof in the pudding, the folks that are really trying to walk the talk, so to speak, are so important in being able to attain that trust, to demonstrate that credibility, and ultimately to not harm the customer experience. Because if you get it wrong and you send the burger image to the vegetarian customer, or you say, oh, did you come in for your Valentine's meal last time and I've never been to your restaurant before?
Exactly. Blows up and
And that
yeah.
information is one of the challenges with AI today. So, I don't mean to start with a negative on it, because obviously I'm in that business now, but I think it is actually something where we've got to be very mindful of working with the right type of partners that really understand where you're at on that path of digital maturity, but also have an appropriate way of being able to prove that they are credible and that they can indeed do what the system has suggested it can.
Well, therein lies the rub, because I think you're identifying the fact that there is so much overwhelm and intimidation on operators because they're bombarded every day with this platform, that platform, and there's just so much, and they don't necessarily know where to begin, or they're sort of hesitant to even dive in because they've heard the bad stories and the negativities of, oh, this doesn't work and it's all BS, like you said. Some of it is really, really valid, and then others, there's still, you got to beware, the buyer beware, like anything. So, are you seeing anything or any specific areas that restaurants are benefiting from using it? And I've got a couple examples myself. I want to share a story with you, but first I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. What if you were starting a restaurant today, Carl? Let's just say you were starting for the first time, and you obviously know more than the average person about AI and what's valuable. What key areas in operating your business would you try to rely on some type of AI software?
Mm.
What if your POS did more than ring up orders? What if it actually ran your restaurant? Touch Bistro is an all-in-one cloud-based POS and restaurant management system designed exclusively for restaurants. They help you run smarter, faster, and more profitably. Touch Bistro brings front of house, back of house, and guest engagement into one easy platform. From patented bill splitting and real-time inventory to labor, profit tracking, loyalty, online ordering, and reservations. It's all connected. Touch Bistro is built for restaurants and built to perform. For operators listening in the US or Canada, Touch Bistro is helping restaurants get started for less with savings on upfront costs for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Head to touchbistro.com/restaurant rockstars for more details and see how much you can save.
Great question. First, I'd have to check myself into the hospital to make sure. You sure you want to do this, Carl? It's
Be careful. It's for you. Maybe you might not want to go there, but anyway.
But I tell you, it kind of answer both your questions with this one in the sense that an area which I'm seeing a great level of momentum in right now is computer vision. And if you take computer vision and then overlay this term unstructured data on top of it, you could also incorporate audio data, things that typically aren't showing up on your average POS report, right? So let's go back because this is kind of a nice link to what we were touching on before. The general manager, the district manager, if you're part of a large restaurant group, can't be there 24/7. They can't understand what's happening in your operation constantly. They're not necessarily going to always be seeing every single SOP and how it's being adhered to. Computer vision now is being used, and we're doing this with a lot of our clients, both in retail and restaurants, whereby we are asking them, what is most important to your customer experience right now? What is the thing that you're worried about that actually, if this isn't done, 95% of the time, that actually you're creating a poor experience for your guests? And for some, it could be in the kitchen to the time in which the patties are being flipped over because they're worried about consistency of the cook. And other times it might be, how long does it take for a customer to be acknowledged from the moment they join a line to the moment they actually get to the front of the line, right? That type of thing can be recorded very easily now through computer vision. And it can also be done also through audio capture as well. This isn't one of our clients, but I was speaking to someone the other day who is now capturing, the restaurant group is capturing the audio data in the 4 or 5 seconds after the food is passed through the drive-through to be able to hear if the customer said something like, "Oh, that wasn't as good as the Taco Bell, was it?" Or it's something to help capture the post-experience data set of the audio words uttered by a customer as they are driving away, right? So that unstructured data can then be overlaid against an SOP, or it could be overlaid against CSAT scores, or it could be overlaid against the sales in a particular area, or it could be overlaid against the labor scheduling and the allocation of labor attributed to a certain area. And so what we're now is taking that data set and, Invisible, we've been really trying to build this idea of a smart GM and turn that into something that can help the GM make more informed decisions. Now, here's the rub though. The GM's pretty busy. So there's a full walk run aspect of this, Roger. And where I think this is really going to emerge best is it doesn't matter how good the tech is. And our tech's pretty good, but it doesn't matter how good it is unless the operational team do something with it, right? And so maybe I found the example is that someone needs to be greeted within 6 seconds of the moment they join the line, right? And I find the data comes back and says, well, across these 20 restaurants here, they're not being greeted for 15 seconds, right? So it's way over the expected standard. What we're trying to do is turn that into coachable opportunities by providing the district managers a report to be able to say, this is the area here where we're seeing some challenges. And actually on this particular location, it's probably because the allocation of the labor, taking some of that structured data, aligning it with the unstructured data, and being able to say, it's probably because the labor allocation for this particular area on Thursday mornings is why you're getting this particular anomaly. If you fix that, you should be good. And then the other one might be something whereby actually it's the third time they've spoken to this particular general manager about this issue. And therefore it's maybe more of a people-orientated challenge that it's just not being understood. Other times it might be because they've allocated someone who's brand new to the restaurant, doesn't really understand the SOPs yet, or hasn't gone through the training yet. So if you can turn these things into coachable opportunities where it's taken the structured data by being fed information from what is being observed on computer vision to then actually help the district manager understand what are the 2 or 3 things that if you were able to change these based on the metrics of what we've seen elsewhere, when this is working well, it's going to have the most demonstrable effect on your restaurant sales and your restaurant's guest satisfaction. That is how technology being deployed really can help create a much better experience, not just for the guests, but also for the team members. Because if you create too much noise, even when it's great technology, even assuming it's working consistently well, if you create too much change on top of the restaurant team, then guess what? It's like one of those fairground things where you pop one thing over here and the other thing pops up over there. So I went on at you a bit there, Roger, but that's how you hopefully sense my passion for it, because I think that is the direction we're going to start to see a lot of this stuff come to life more. And I think if we can start to do that initially through district managers and coaching, and then maybe the kind of smart GM idea of being able to help GMs make more informed decisions in the moment, where this ultimately will head is we're going to get little audio prompts into people's ears, being able to say, just so you're aware, the customer's been here for 6 seconds right now, or 60 seconds hasn't been greeted, or maybe table 12 hasn't had a table touch in over 12 minutes, right? That type of thing you could see coming to life, but it's got to be managed in the appropriate fashion so that it doesn't become crazily, overburdensome upon the team. And that's why it's got to start probably at the management level first.
You definitely touched on it. And it is, of course, about execution and not overwhelming and getting too many people to onboard at once, because there are certain people that embrace this stuff. They're influencers within a restaurant. They're thought leaders. People look up to them, that sort of thing. And they're the ideal people to immerse in this first and prove and get the kinks out of it before it then gets rolled out to the rest of the team. And try one piece of technology. Don't try to do it all at once and all that kind of stuff. And interestingly, most of our audience would know that young people today are still playing a huge part in restaurants, Gen Z, and they're so tech savvy and they're so dialed in. And that brings up, I did some interviewing in the past couple of weeks with some restaurants on how they're using AI. And here in the state of Maine, Portland, Maine is a big food city. I mean, lots of James Beard award winning, lots of competition, every concept you could think of here. And I walked into what everyone would consider to be a very successful restaurant group, 5 locations, fine dining for the most part, James Beard chef, the whole 9 yards. And I walked in and the general manager wasn't available, but I did speak to a floor manager, a younger person, and there was frustration exhibited that they see so many ways that AI can make this place more efficient, more productive, better guest service, all these things. And the GM and the owners are like, we want nothing to do with it. And I was really, really surprised at that answer, because I know a lot of restaurants are at least dipping their toe in the water, but here's a super successful group that thinks we got this, we don't need this, and we're always going to be relevant when staying relevant is so important. So I was surprised by that. Ajinomoto is your answer to every busy dinner rush spent deep in the weeds. When hungry customers walk through your door, they expect good food that tastes homemade. But making every dish from scratch cuts into your profit, especially with the cost of ingredients and labor. That's where Ajinomoto Foods comes in. Ajinomoto has a huge catalog of fast, easy-to-prep frozen Asian products that taste and look homemade. That includes classics like fried rice, dumplings, and onion rings, and new trendy fusion plates like kimchi chicken pot stickers. Choosing Ajinomoto is choosing over 100 years of proven expertise in the food service space. Choose to save time and money in your busy kitchen without compromising on the quality your guests expect. Learn about Ajinomoto at ajinomotofoodservice.com.
On right now needs to be able to understand the business championship of certain initiatives. And that's where, going back to those stats earlier about the 90% of projects that are failing, it's got to tie back to a core business objective, a commercial outcome, right? So even in that restaurant, what are they trying to achieve this year? What are their core commercial goals? And maybe they're kind of comfortable with the fact that sales have been going great, and maybe their labor to cost ratios are great. Maybe their customer satisfaction numbers are great. Well, then, it's a case of, well, if they're that great, maybe you want to duplicate this restaurant and do it somewhere else in a similar location to Portland and go in and do it that way. Well, how do you drive that consistency? So, it's not about tech for just tech's sake. If things are working fine, then yeah, don't worry about it. But I do think the reality of our industry is one of consistency and execution.
Mhm. I thought that a particular threat was this whole labor issue again. And retention is so important in a high turnover business. And if you really want to, get people really passionate about hospitality and show them that there's a way forward and that you can rise up in this industry and not lose them to the competition, I almost got the sense that these people are just going to get frustrated that they want to improve the business and they're kind of roadblocked by people that aren't embracing that technology. So I think, there's a flip side of that coin as well.
No, I often I agree with you, but I think there is this fear about AI taking jobs away, especially in an industry that services so many of our employees across the US. But I often joke with folks and say, well, I don't know how many years ago it was when the dishwasher came to town, right? The actual dishwasher that went into our restaurants. But before that dishwasher went into our restaurants, there was someone washing those dishes, right?
Oh,
Now, so in a way, it's a form of automation, right? You put things in, a person's involved in putting things in, and then it automates a particular process. But there's still some humans involved in the dishwashing process, as we know. And so I think really what this is all angling towards is if automation, whether it's AI or otherwise, but if automation helps your team spend more time with the guests, more times with creating a greater experience, then isn't that what we're all here for? Isn't that what we really want to be involved in? If it allows your chefs and your cooks to be able to really create an even better experience, a more consistently delivered experience, isn't that what we're all in the business for?
yeah, I would agree. I was in an airport last week. I scanned the QR code. There's the menu. It actually upsold me on certain things. I ordered from the table, but I still got the personality of the person that came over, greeted me, asked if my experience was going well, delivered the food, brought the drinks, asked if everything was to my satisfaction. And then I paid at the table and the convenience was there, but the hospitality wasn't lost on the experience. So it's definitely a balance because there are certain places that really need to move the traffic quickly. And then there's those fine dining places where you don't want to rush people in and out. You certainly want to turn your tables, but you don't want people to feel like, technology is taking jobs and that the personal experience is lost. I never want to see that happen in hospitality.
Fast casual is working as a concept so well because the customer can leave once they've had their experience at their leisure, right? So in many ways, I suspect that was a casual dining type of setup there, but they created that experience that allowed you to pay when you wanted and not have to wait for someone to come around and support you. So they were recognizing that as a traveler, sometimes you need to eat quick and get out.
The ambiance was there as well. It was a really comfortable, engaging ambiance that was on target with the concept itself. It transported me out of that airport to an elegant experience, even though they automated part of the experience. So I thought that was pretty well done. And it's a fine line, of course, but it's just food for thought. It's something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about your digital restaurant books. Do you want to describe what each of those books is about and what we can learn from them?
Yeah, thank you. The first book, which is the dark blue colored one above my shoulder here, Delivering the Digital Restaurants, Your Roadmap to the Future of Food is the title of that. That one came out in the middle of the pandemic. And it came out because the restaurant industry was not really embracing e-commerce in the way that I thought it needed to. My co-author and I interviewed over 100 or so restaurant executives and technologists and really tried to paint a picture as to why opening up additional channels beyond your dining channel is so critical to your restaurant success. And largely because your customer base is experiencing e-commerce in all its various different forms in many, many, if not all other verticals. And so why shouldn't they get that from the restaurant environment as well? I mean, similarly to today's earlier conversation, it's also about now you can actually digitize the information about your guests, recognizing that your guest is an omni-channel customer. And some days they're going to eat in, and other days they're going to want to take out, and other days they might want to have it delivered to them. But that experience and that ability to record the data set attributed to that type of customer, to understand and build up a portfolio of knowledge about them, allows you then to remarket to them in a way that really makes most sense in an efficient fashion. Far more than perhaps what most restaurants have to rely on today, which is either a mailer or the hope that the aromas from the restaurant is capturing someone's attention as they're walking past, right? So it's enabling a completely different kind of marketing capability in that mindset. And so we talk in that book about what we can learn from pizza and why pizza is ahead of the most other cuisine types. We even take trips across to China and England and India and talk about how other international markets are really shaping the way. And then also talk to some of the things that have been tried in the space and the different ways in which this digitization has affected the industry. But that was the why. That was the why do you want to take this seriously? We realized quickly, especially when speaking to more of the independent restaurants out there, that even those folks that had been bought into the idea of why, and the first book came out, as I say, in the middle of the pandemic. So the book was very much the go-to resource to help understand why this was important. But there wasn't a book that was saying how. And so we wrote the second book, which is called Delivering the Digital Restaurant, The Path to Digital Maturity, to help restaurants figure out, well, where are you today? This was, of course, written post the pandemic. This was less of a time where you had to spray and pray and figure out what technology ultimately landed and stuck on the wall forever. And also got to a place where they could not necessarily look at it as something they needed to do to survive, but what they needed to do to thrive. And so the book really charts in a more practical way. Each chapter has a worksheet, a workbook at the end of it, for example, for the restaurant owner to ask themselves some questions, to maybe do a few little sums here and there, and to be able to find where on this path to digital maturity are they, and also what are the steps they need to consider about whether they wish to pursue further levels of maturity in their business. And we get to a place at the end of the book, without any spoilers here, of them being able to say, well, at some point, you're going to need to make a decision as to whether you really want to focus on creating the greatest of experiential type of environments. And that is absolutely fine. We all still want that type of restaurant experience, or whether you want to be a restaurant that opens your doors up to multiple ways of being able to run itself. But regardless of whichever path they take, I talk about this idea of a holistic interdependent system. The reality is that our restaurant industry, because of the last 15, 20 years and the technology that has been bestowed upon it, we've created a SaaSified setup, which means that the average restaurant group has somewhere between 15 and 20 different systems running it. And because those models have been built through SaaS, they don't all talk to each other, perhaps in the best fashion. And because of that, we've got all these different data silos of guest data over here, transaction data over here, labor data over there, inventory data down here. And because they're not talking to each other, the systems that we've gone and built and enabled our restaurants to supposedly thrive in are going to fail us from really taking that next true level to total digital maturity. And guess what? AI, when good AI meets bad data in a fight, the data always wins. And that is our challenge. Because for restaurants truly to take advantage of this new wave of technology through Gen AI and AI kind of capabilities, it's going to have to address the fact that having so many different systems and so many point solutions that haven't been built and customized around their own business operation is going to hurt them from being able to progress forward. And so as we get to the back end of that second book, I talk about that important factor and how the leaders of today really need to be thinking about data unification and whether they really should be thinking about point solutions or whether they should be thinking about things that, again, Invisible Technologies and My Company Today does, which is build mesh custom-based solutions around their operation and be able to work alongside the tech stack that they do see being really important to their ongoing success. So both of those books, Roger, are setting a little bit of thought leadership up in both directions. And hopefully they're helpful to any restaurant owner that's really trying to grapple with them.
Well, the second book, you talked about unification. We've all seen restaurants that have tech that doesn't communicate with each other. It doesn't link, and it's overwhelmed, and it literally causes chaos. So clearly, consolidation and what do you really need and what do you get the most benefit from, which obviously benefits the guest. But the first book, I think I heard something about, I love this term, the lifetime value of a customer. And I like to use the word guest, and I see that you do as well. But there's so many restaurants out there that are constantly looking for new guests when they could be getting so much more out of their existing raving fans. And that is the lifetime value. And you mentioned it well. It's like some days they feel like dining in, and some days they feel like taking out, and sometimes they're going to DoorDash it and all that kind of stuff. But if you create that affinity, I call it, that tremendous loyalty where people are spending money in multiple ways, but your place is their place, that is a really powerful thing. versus always spinning your wheels trying to find new guests. New guests are important, but taking care of those that really serve you well. I think there's definitely a key lesson there. So I'm really glad you shared. Those books sound fascinating, and I'm sure there's a lot of nuggets of information.
Yeah, no, they certainly have been received well, and we've won a few awards for them, and they've become, I think, bestsellers in about 11 or 12 different countries now. So it's more than
Awesome.
just the US that seems to have benefited from them. And ultimately, it's because there isn't a place out there where I feel people can just get one balanced perspective, right? A lot of what we think about when it comes to restaurant technology are people that are pitching and selling us stuff. And no matter how strong the relationship is, they're still trying to sell a product. So I'm hoping the books represent an unbiased view, and to help those folks that perhaps aren't technologists at heart, but are hospitality professionals, really see that technology and hospitality can come together as one.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your nuggets of wisdom, and your long experience in the hospitality space. So your credit to the industry. I always enjoy talking shop with you, Carl. So thanks for coming back, and thanks for being on the show.
Always pleasure, and looking forward to maybe coming back again in a couple of years from now, Roger, and seeing what's happened since, because it's always moving, isn't it?
Mind blowing. Yeah. You'll have 5 more books by then. You'll have so much more to talk about. Thank you so much. This was the Restaurant Rockstars podcast. We're so glad you tuned in. Thanks you to our audience. Thanks to our sponsors this week. Can't wait to see you in the next episode. Stay tuned, stay well, and I will see you then.
People go to restaurants for lots of reasons. For fun, celebration, for family, for lifestyle. What the customer doesn't know is the thousands of details it takes to run a great restaurant. This is a high-risk, high-fail business. It's hard to find great staff. Costs are rising and profits are disappearing. It's a treacherous road, and smart operators need a professional guide. I'm Roger. I've started many highly successful, high-profit restaurants. I'm passionate about helping other owners and managers not just succeed, but knock it out of the park. I created a game-changing system, and it's filled with everything I've learned in over 20 years running super profitable, super fun restaurants. Everything from creating high-profit menu items and cost controls, to staff training where your teams serve and sell, to marketing hooks, money-maximizing tips, and efficiencies across your operation. What does this mean to you? More money to invest in your restaurant, to hire a management team, time freedom, and peace of mind. You don't just want to run a restaurant, you want to dominate your competition and create a lasting legacy. Join the Academy and I'll show you how it's done.